Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I will repeat this today by reading Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 12, text number 22. Mrigendra iva vikranto nisevyo himavaniva titikshur vasudhevasim sahishnu pitarvar iva. Mrugendra iva vikranto nisheyo himamaniva titikshur vasudhevashu sahishna pitaraviva. Mrigendra iva vikranto nishevyo himamaniva titikshur vasudheveshu sahishnu pitra iva. Does anybody want to read the verse? The Sanskrit. I like the way Krishna Prema Prabhu did it yesterday. If anybody wants to.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, please go ahead.
Mukendra iva vikranto nishevyo himavaniva itikshur vasudevasau sahishnu pitaraviva.
Very beautiful, Mataji. Anybody else? Sandhya Mataji went off mute. Maybe you want to try.
Mrigendra iva vikranto nishevyo himavaniva itukshur vasudevashu sahishnu pitarau iva.
Mrigendra iva vikranto nishevyo himavaniva titikshur vasudevasu sahishnu pitarau iva. Thank you.
Go through the word-to-word meanings. Mrigendraha, the lion. Iva, like. Vikrant, powerful. Nishyevya, worthy of taking shelter. Himavan, the Himalayan mountains. Iva, like. Titikshu, forbearance. Vasudheveshu, Vasudha Iva, like the earth. Asho, the child. Sahishnu, tolerant. Pitrao, parents. Iva, like. Translation: this child will be as strong as a lion and as worthy as a shelter as the Himalayan mountains. He will be forbearing like the earth and as tolerant as his parents. So I'll take a little different spin on today's, how we address today's purport. So I'll go ahead and say my prayers, and then what we'll do is we'll take each section of the purport and discuss it. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadhamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Sha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhupya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. A very wonderful way to start every day morning. And also we're reading a section where Parikshit Maharaj has just advented into this material world, right? He has taken birth, and we're seeing the conversation between the Brahmanas and Yudhishthira Maharaj happening right away. And we are talking in this particular section, what exactly is happening is the Brahmanas are predicting the future of Parikshit Maharaj. And the way they're predicting, and I think very beautifully explained by the devotees over the several days, starting all the way from Radha Prabhu on Vedic astrology, and then we proceeded forward. Last couple of days, Kathamrita Mataji spoke, and then our my mind is blanking. Sri Kishore Prabhu spoke, and then Krishna Prema Prabhu spoke. So we're continuing on this topic of the predictions of Parikshit Maharaj's future, right? So in this section, I think Sri Kishore Prabhu lightly touched where he described how they're predicting by comparing the previous ancestors, or usually the only way we can describe somebody's quality is by comparing something that had happened to the past, or comparing to some other object, so that it is more easy to communicate those qualities, right? So over the several days we saw how he was compared to Lord Ramachandra, how he would be like Lord Ramachandra in ruling the kingdom and whatnot. So today we'll be covering a section where they're describing his qualities, or guna, and I think in Krishna says, and also Sri Krishna Prabhu touched this, the varnashrama system and whatnot. So they're touching the qualities or the gunas of Parikshit Maharaj based on his birth, right? So before we go here, I want you to understand, what does guna mean, right? Meaning a quality. And then how does that guna correlate to devotee? That is the main topic for today I want to touch. So in the, it's a very joke, it's a joke that I recently heard by His Grace Gaura Gopal Prabhu, but it has a deep meaning to it, especially when it comes to people who are playing the role of leaders or leadership role, and when, and each one of us is playing in that role. As a parent, we are in charge of our children, or as a community leader, you may be in charge of a certain service that is given to you, or at work or whatnot, right? So this is a nice one. There is a poultry farm, and there are a lot of chickens there, right? They lay eggs every day, and one day the owner of the poultry farm comes to his chicken farm, and he starts to speak to all the chickens. He says, I want you all to listen to me very carefully. We are going through extreme economic situation. You are eating a lot of grains, and you're laying only one egg. If this process continues further, it is going to be extremely difficult for us to survive. So I want you all to lay 10 eggs every day, starting from tomorrow. I don't care how you're going to do it. I want you to lay 10 eggs. So all the chickens get inspired very much. They try their hard and whatnot. They want to please their master somehow, and somehow they, whatever they did, the next day the poultry farm owner comes, and then he's surprised to see that every bird has laid 10 eggs, except one bird which laid only one egg. Then he goes to this one bird and he says, my dear bird, did you not understand what I explained to you yesterday? Everybody is doing their part. Why are you the only one who is doing like this, who is behaving like this? You should make up to things. You need to understand what I'm talking about. You don't understand the urgency of the situation. Then the bird becomes very saddened, and he looks at the master and says, "My dear master, I want you to understand my situation. It's very hard for me." The master says, "No, you should do it. There's expectations on you. You have to be doing this." Then the bird looks at him and says, "My dear master, please understand me, please. I am not a chicken. I'm a rooster, and somehow I laid one egg." So that is the joke. So the reason I bring this up is oftentimes, there is pressure on us, either external pressure or internal pressure. Meaning external pressures means, there is demand from outside world, that there is certain expectations out of us, and it happens at different levels, right? Meaning there is expectations on us on a material platform, there is expectations from our spouse, there is expectations from our children, there is expectations from community, even in devotee circles, there's expectations and whatnot, right? And then, obviously at work, there's expectations, there's reward and return and everything, right? But if one doesn't understand, if he's, in simple terms, I put, he's a chicken or a rooster, what happens is you end up putting yourself in an artificial platform where, and that is external expectations, I said earlier, sorry. The second part I was going to say is internal expectations. We often try to inspire ourselves or put pressure on ourselves by looking at other people. We compare with other people and say, I want to be like this, I want to be like this, I should be doing like this. And based on our internal desires, we also try to put pressure on other people around us. That is the third one, our expectation of others. There's expectations of others on us. There is our own expectations, and then our expectations of other people, right? So, but what does Bhagavad Gita talk about this one, right? What does Srimad Bhagavatam talk about this one, right? In a society, when you look at it holistically, and very beautifully explained by Sri Krishna Prabhu on Varnashrama Dharma system, right? Each person has a role to play. And then each person can fulfill, in a Varnashram system based on the guna that this person has acquired. Guna means the qualities that this person has acquired from several lifetimes. And based on karma also, guna is not enough. Meaning, one may have a Brahman, Vaishya, Kshatriya, or Shudra gunas or qualities, but at the same time, his karma also should enable it, right? Just because somebody is very intelligent, he may not become the court head of a king, right? He cannot be playing the role of like Chanakya, who was a great Brahmin, right? He was the advisor to, I believe, Chandragupta Maurya. So, one's karma also should facilitate. But based on the guna and karma, if you are able to somehow, by the grace of the spirit of the spiritual master, by the grace of the Supreme Lord, we are able to identify that, then one can be very satisfied in executing his dharma, his varnashrama dharma. So once you know your guna and your karma, you can you can perform your dharma, and then fulfill your obligations to the society, right? And that this is varnashrama dharma I'm talking about. There is again Daivi varnashrama dharma. We'll take a bit about it, right? So let us approach today's purport and verse from a varnashrama system perspective. Meaning how are the Brahmanas describing the qualities of Parikshit Maharaj? And let us take it purely, not from a devotional platform, but purely just from a varnashrama system perspective, right? So here, there are 4 qualities that are being described. The first one is Vikranta, right? Vikranta means power or prowess. And then Nishyeya, meaning shelter, the propensity to give shelter to other people. And Titikshu, or forbearance. These 2 words, go very close to each other, Titikshu, and the next one is Sahishnu, meaning tolerant. They go very close, but there's a subtle difference. Let us see what those are, right? So let us go to the purport. The purport by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So one is compared to a lion when he is very strong. When one is very strong in chasing an enemy, one should be a lamb at the home and a lion in the chase. The lion never fails in the chase of an animal. Similarly, the head of the state should never fail in chasing an enemy. So there are two things, right? There is the object that is being described against and the quality, right? So here Srila Prabhupada is talking about the prowess or the power of a lion and its ability to chase an enemy. So if anybody watched like a documentary series in either on BBC or on Discovery Channel or National Geographic, you must have seen how a lion or a leopard or a tiger, how they chase their prey. You will notice that, especially if you look at a setting in a savanna like Africa, the lion is or the lioness is sitting in one place. It's just looking around the whole forest, right? It's just watching and watching and watching. It doesn't move at all, right? It just sits there, keeping watching. And you will see that the animals are moving around freely. Because you're a spectator, you feel that, oh my God, there's danger, but the animals are still freely moving around and whatnot, And when the lion gets hungry, at some point, right, it finds its prey, meaning it sees the target, it finds its prey, and you will notice that, and especially when it's chasing a deer, if you see that, the moment it gets up and it springs and it starts to run after the deer is so fast. I mean, the deer is known for its speed. But you will notice that, if you carefully watch for that 2 or 5 minutes chase, you will notice that you feel at some points that the deer has escaped. I think the deer got saved. It got escaped. It goes left, right, straight. It goes in so much random fashion. The lion, while it is heavy and huge, it tries to maneuver its path. But one thing you will notice is the lion never fails in capturing the deer. No matter how hard, it doesn't get distracted. Even if there's another deer close by, for some reason, it is focused, 100% focused on this one deer. It doesn't change its target. It focuses on this deer and goes after it and kills it somehow. So that is the nature of a Kshatriya. Once they recognize an enemy, they conquer the enemy no matter what. One may think, oh my God, how can, how can one be so cruel? Right? If there's an enemy, sometimes you may feel that the enemy is subdued, meaning they may have captured the enemy, but they still kill the enemy. We see that discussion that happens between Krishna, Yudhishthira Maharaj, Arjuna, and Draupadi when Ashwadhama was captured, right? Ashwadhama was captured, he was subdued, but there's a big argument about should he be killed or should he not be killed, right? And then Chanakya also, Chanakya is Chanakya Niti Shastra is taken as one of the most topmost in the administrative circles. Chanakya also says one should not forgive one's enemy at all. They have to be killed 100%. Why is that, right? Even if an enemy is subdued and if he is left and forgiven, the enemy will go back. He will try to gain his strength back and he will come back and attack. That is the nature of an enemy. So one has to completely take care of the enemy. Now, who is an enemy? It is important to understand, right? Anybody who displeases me is an enemy. Anybody who says something against me is an enemy, or somebody who disagrees with me is an enemy. Is that an enemy? Or who is a real enemy? Let us discuss that about later. I will need your help later. I was scribbling my notes and I get a chance to pull the verse. I think most of you have done the first module of the Bhagavad Gita. Who is classified as an enemy? Can somebody help me here? In Bhagavad Gita, I believe in chapter 1 or chapter 2, Srila Prabhupada gives the clear definition of who is an enemy.
Lust, anger, and greed.
No, that is for a devotee, Mataji. But for a Kshatriya, or even for us as a human being, who is when I look at who is my enemy, because Arjuna gives an argument, right? He gives an argument that I will not fight them. They are my parents. They are my relatives. Or definitely, I'll give you the right words, so you will get the answer. in Bhagavad Gita, in Bhakti Shastri, you have read about 4 aggressors. There are 4 kinds of aggressors. Anybody remembers 4 kinds of aggressors?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes,
Hello.
Mataji.
Hey, Anuja, how are you?
Hare Krishna, somebody. Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Mohan Lila Prabhu, the one who sets fire, someone who attacks one's wife, and all those stuff.
Yes,
right?
there are 4 kinds of aggressors: who sets fire to one's property, one who attacks his wife. Go ahead, Mataji. Somebody was saying.
One who kidnaps one's wife,
Yes.
plunders wealth,
Plunders wealth. Yes.
or poisons.
Poison giver.
Yes.
Poison
So,
giver.
yeah. So those are enemies. They're classified as enemies, and they have to be completely. They can be killed. That's what they have to be killed. Actually, Krishna says, right? And we see all the battles that happen from a Varnashram Dharma perspective, right? From when we see all the battles that even Dhruva Maharaj, right? When his brother was killed, he goes and attacks the Yakshas, right? And he destroys the whole, he almost destroys the whole Yaksha dynasty, right? So, because they are all operating on the principles of Kshatriya Dharma, right? They are giving protection, or they are giving protection by taking care of the enemies, right? And also Bhagavad Gita, we also heard about how 4 people, actually 3 kinds of people that need protection: women, old people, and children have to be protected. So we'll see, like no matter what battle we discuss in Bhagavatam, right? Those are all based on these principles of aggressors, right? Now, let us go to the second piece. And then, they have to take care of the enemy. They have to be killed no matter what, right? And that's why Parikshit Maharaj quality is being compared to a lion. And now Yudhishthira Maharaj feels very happy because Yudhishthira Maharaj is a Kshatriya, and he knows that my future king or my future generation is able to take care of their own subjects by subduing all the enemies, right? He has the qualities of a lion. Now, yes, okay, externally he's taking care of that. Now, how about his own subjects, right? The Himalaya mountains are famous for all riches. They are innumerable caves to live in, numberless trees of good fruits to eat, good springs to drink water, and from profuse drugs and minerals to cure diseases. Any man who is not materially prosperous can take shelter of these great mountains, and he will be provided with everything required. Both the materialist and the spiritualist can take advantage of the great great shelter of the Himalayas. So that is the second quality. How can another quality of a king or a Kshatriya is to give shelter. Everybody can take shelter under the king because everybody is a subject of the king. So it may be the necessities of the food, may it be different platforms. There's different psyches in everyone. And there is in the Western world they talk about this pyramid, where one's basic needs of food, shelter should be taken care of. Then on top of it, there's emotional needs. So one's emotional needs should be taken care of, and then on top of it, there is other needs, spiritual needs, the need to perform service or need to have a social life and whatnot. All those needs should be taken care of by a Kshatriya, right, as a king. And that's why you'll notice, example, and I think this could be a good instruction for the devotees too, is to not be judgmental, right? When based on guna and karma, each person is at their own platform, at their own level, right? That's why, I think it'll be surprised to hear sometimes, I think especially when Krishna's arrival to Dwarka is described, right? One hears about the prostitutes welcoming Krishna into Dwarka. One may ask a question, why are there prostitutes in Dwarka? If it is a saintly, if it's a holy place, if it's compared to the spiritual world, why are there prostitutes there, right? So, and that is just one example, but you will notice that in a society, there is always some room for not so religious principles also, like why is there liquor, why is there certain things. And this is where Vedic culture stands out when compared to other, I would say, religions or Abrahamic religions or stuff like that, right? It stands out because Vedic religion gives shelter to everyone. Why is there meat eating, and whatnot. This is where Vedic culture stands out. The way the Vedic culture approaches humanity in general is from guna and karma vibhagasa, right? Meaning there are going to be people who need these facilities. If that does not exist, what happens is, if that facility is not existing for them, what will happen is they will create chaos in society. It's because of their nature. They will create chaos in society. So it is important for a Kshatriya or a king to ensure that every citizen is taken care of, even if it's at the dharmic level or not at the dharmic level. So such facilities are provided in a complete holistic society. So earlier I said, it is important for devotees to be very careful, in the sense like sometimes when we understand the highest principles of bhakti, we talk about 4 regulative principles and whatnot. Yeah, obviously one has taken a vow to perform these. They should be performing this platform, but we should also be tolerant. We'll be talking about a few items later on, tolerance and forbearance. It is important for us to understand that based on guna and karma, each person is at a different level, but they should not be deprived of the shelter that is being provided by Srila Prabhupada. Satsvarupa Goswami Maharaj writes, in Lila, and the title is really beautiful of this section. He says, he built a house where the whole world can live. So Krishna consciousness, or the society of Krishna consciousness, is not just the temples and it's not just the buildings. It is more about every person in this world, no matter based on their guna and karma, they can engage themselves in service to Krishna in some form or fashion, right? And it is important for us to be able to accommodate somebody's and welcome people of different natures, right? Something that I want to point out is, it is very, and I think each one of us can correlate to this based on Nityananda Prabhu's mercy and whatnot. Each one of us is very welcoming to new people, no matter what they do, right? No matter what kind of shortcomings they have. But sometimes where we fall short is, somebody, initially, just like a rocket, right? When a rocket takes off to space, what happens is it is given a lot of acceleration in the beginning. So, until it reaches zero gravity, there is huge amount of thrust that is put on the rocket, so that this rocket can go to outer space. But once it reaches zero gravity, the travel from there, say if it's a spaceship is going from Earth to Mars, once it reaches zero gravity, the travel from out of zero gravity to Mars takes several years. I think anywhere between 3 or 7 years, something. I don't remember the statistics. So in that journey, you will see that the thrust is not so much there. But even a little thrust, a small amount of thrust, even like 1 pound of force, helps it accelerate very fast towards its destiny. So often what happens is when people come newly to Krishna consciousness, this is something, for people who have been in the society for quite a bit of time, some lesson to keep in mind. There is a huge amount of support that is given to everyone. And, they get this thrust, they make it to zero gravity somehow, they're able to follow the principles of devotional service, they are able to do quite a few things. And then once they reach zero gravity, our expectation as a society kind of changes on them. And if somebody is struggling through something, we tend to become judgmental often. I'll leave it there. I don't want to dig further. So each one of us can introspect within ourselves. When I look at people around me, am I being judgmental, or am I being this Himalayan mountain which is able to give shelter to everyone, right? So I'll leave it there. And then we will go to the next two qualities, forbearing. Forbearing means titikshu. So this word is very, very critical, I would say, titikshu, It's again, when we feel it is tolerance, it is not tolerance. It is a little different. So for those of you who like to search Vedabase, it is very easy to find out where you find this word in any other different places, right? So I just right click on this titikshu and say, okay. So you will see that titikshu appears in several other verses in Bhagavatam, right? It has different meanings, forbearance, tolerating, forgiving, tolerant again, right? But most importantly, I wanted to point out, this word also has a little different in grammatic representation in other places. And this is the famous verse. Most of you must have heard this verse. Titikshuva karunika, suhruda sarvadehina, ajata shatrava shantaha, sadhava sadhu bhushana. These are the qualities that are described of a devotee. It comes in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So what are the qualities of a devotee? The symptoms of a sadhu are he is tolerant, merciful, friendly to other living entities, and he has no enemies. He is peaceful, he abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. This is a very, very important verse. And actually, if I look up where else this titikshava word is used, you will notice that it will come again in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, if somebody studies Chaitanya Charitamrita, you will notice that there are quite a few verses that are repeated or pretty much stamped taken directly from Bhagavatam and placed in Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So this verse very specifically appears in Chaitanya Charitamrita again, and he actually quotes the exact verse. He says, Titikshava karunika, suhruda sarvadeshina, ajata shatrava shantaha, sadhava sadhu bhushana. So he is quoting the same verse again, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And where does he quote this verse? You will notice that. Look at the chapter, heading of the chapter, the process of devotional service. So this is very interesting because now we are, I'm shifting my lecture, but obviously we can continue to take it from the angle of the Varnashram Dharma, but now it is becoming Dhaivi Varnashram Dharma, or it's becoming pure devotional service. Now I'm transitioning my talk on that. So if we go back, what is Srila Prabhupada talking about in this particular verse? Do I still have that verse? Okay, I still lost it. Okay. So what is this quality? As a Kshatriya, one should be forbearing, or one's titikshava should be like the earth. Let us see what Srila Prabhupada is saying here. On the surface of the earth, there are so many disturbances caused by the inhabitants. In the modern age, the people have begun to detonate atomic weapons on the surface of the earth, and still the earth is forbearing to inhabitants, like a mother who excuses a little child. So what is this quality being compared to? The earth, right? Forbearing. So Mother Earth, right? How long has this earth been existing? Not from a scientific perspective, but from a Vedic perspective, right? Since Mahavishnu generated, right? From the pores of his body and from his breathing, this universe has been created, and Mother Earth existed since then. And we will see how, just in Srimad Bhagavatam, if you don't even quote the other Puranas, just in Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll see how much atrocities that Mother Earth had to witness, starting all the way from Hiranyaksha, where he captures Mother Earth and he puts him down deep in the ocean. And we also see how Hayagriva, retrieves the Vedas. The Vedas are hidden and whatnot. And then, we see atrocities happening just in Srimad Bhagavatam itself, right? But imagine going through, each one of us, in our own little world, little universe, we perform the role of, sorry, I'm going over time. I'll take a few more minutes. I'll conclude it very quickly. We see so many things happening. The moment when we see our own, there's this me and mine mentality, right? When we see our own me and mine mentality, and the little people we have influence on, when they go through some troubles, how much ache goes in our heart, even if it's not our own direct trouble. It hurts our feelings, right? And each one of us is a son and daughter of this Mother Earth. Now, Mother Earth is having to witness all this happening to, from generations and generations and generations. But she's very and its own people abuse her, right? If you see the state of the planet Earth, even from a scientific perspective, it is in its worst condition, right? How much chemical or, in different ways, how this Mother Earth, even just the element of Earth, when we talk about the 5 Panchabhutas, the element of Earth is destroyed, right? The water is destroyed, how much pollution is created. But Mother Earth is tolerant. She never gives up. And we saw this especially in the pandemic, right? When the whole world stopped for several months, we saw how Mother Earth recovered. So Mother Earth is always there to provide to its children or its subjects. I think Srila Prabhupada actually says subjects or inhabitants. So similarly, a Kshatriya is always there, no matter how, as long as they're not aggressors, right? As long as they're not enemies who are trying to destroy something, one has to be tolerant and give them a chance, right? Give them opportunities and whatnot, not abandon them. And then lastly, it talks about parents. I think this is something that we can take direct example because of the expectations we put ourselves on our children, right? And it says, parents are always tolerant to the children for all sorts of mischievous acts. An ideal king may be possessed by all these good qualities, and the child Parikshit was foretold to have these qualities. Let us just spend 1 minute on this one. Parents are always tolerant to children for all sorts of mischievous acts, right? So if you take from Guna Karma Vibhagasa, or the dharma of a child, right? What is the nature of a child? They just are mischievous. That's it. Often our expectation of our children is we want them to become old people. I think it is unfair to expect children to become old when they are still young. We always hope our child is has become very sober very quickly in their life. Come on, they're 10 years old, maybe they are 20 years old. We expect them to become like certain ideal, like Prahlad Maharaj. Yes, well and great if they become like Prahlad Maharaj, but based on their guna and karma, I'm sure we are way off of that. Each one of us, when we relate to our own childhood life, what was our expectations? What not our expectations, but what was expected of us, right? So it's important to remember that children are children, right? And it's important to give them that space, right? When a king, just like when an ideal king takes care of his subjects perfectly like this, meaning they are being protected, meaning the citizens are protected from enemies. They are given shelter, meaning they are given all opportunity to thrive, no matter what kind of qualities they have. And if we are forbearing, if we are like the Mother Earth, and we are tolerant like parents, automatically their Krishna consciousness will revive. And I'm just not talking about our own children or so-called children who are even like 45, 50 years old, but from a devotional perspective, they may be children too, right? So it's important to remember these qualities as a Kshatriya. Each one of us plays some form of role. So these are the idealistic qualities that are being set forth here, are being explained, that these are the qualities of Parikshit Maharaj. I'll quickly conclude in the next 3 minutes. Sorry, taking 15 minutes extra. But how does this whole thing apply when we look at when Parikshit Maharaj was attacked by Shringi? Or even we see other situations where Prahlad was attacked by his own father. How do we put these qualities? They are all Kshatriyas. Why did they not rebel against Shringi or Takshaka or whatnot? You will notice that there is one thing that is very unique when you separate out the Varnashram Dharma from, I will call it a Daivi Varnashram Dharma, but a qualities of a devotee, right? The one thing that separates us is when it comes to others, I'm going to attack the enemies. I'm going to be very tolerant of other people. I'm going to take care of the maintenance of the other people. And I'm going to be tolerant as parent, right? I'm going to forbearance. But when it comes to me, this whole perspective changes. What is that perspective when it comes to me? Right? There's a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam that Lord Brahma recites. What is that? I'm turning blank. 1 second, it'll come to me. Tattenu susamikshamanam bunjana yevatna yatkrad vipakam. So Lord Brahma says, when it comes to me, when all the problems and the troubles comes to me, for example, I think we easily switch this unconsciously. When there's a problem for somebody else, we say, oh my God, it is their karma. This is what they got because of what their actions were and whatnot. But actually, it is supposed to be switched. It is supposed to be like when things come to me, meaning when somebody insults me, when somebody attacks me, or when somebody when my maintenance is taken away from me, meaning one has to think it is because of my previous karmic activities. This is why I am getting this. And when one tolerates that with that intention, and performs their devotional service, then Brahma says liberation is their birthright. And then Srila Prabhupada very nicely says in that purport, what is a birthright? He says, if you are a son of a millionaire, and you may not have access to that that wealth, but all you have to do is live. Don't die. If you just live one day, all that wealth is going to be yours. The only thing you have to do is live. So similarly, no matter how many troubles come in our life, if you just continue to perform your devotional service, then liberation becomes your birthright. Liberation or devotional service, right? It becomes your birthright. But when it comes to others, when somebody else is suffering, when somebody else is going through something, you should be like Parikshit Maharaj. These are the qualities that are being described. We should be like Parikshit Maharaj when it comes to somebody else. And that could be our immediate subjects too. It could be our children, we should be very tolerant with them. It should be others, we should help them. Our children, we can easily help them. If they don't have if they get into trouble, we easily find ways to find money and help them and whatnot. But when it comes to other people, our neighbor or our somebody, we may even hesitate to help them. We may show compassion, we may show some empathy, but are we getting into action? That's another story, right? So this is where I would like to conclude. As we're reading these qualities, if you look at it from the perspective of, if I am, if it is something else is happening to others, how should I behave? This is how it should be. But when it is happening to me, it is Sattvanukampam Susamikshama. So I'd like to stop it here. Please forgive me. I went a little over time. Do we still have time for discussion, or whatever you say?
I think Lingaraj Prabhu made you host, Prabhu, because he had to attend a meeting.
Oh, okay. Yes. So
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, this is
Hare-
Bhakti Devidasi. Please accept my humble obeisances, all glory to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. It was very encouraging session, and I'm very fortunate to join and hear it today and understand. Thank you so much.
oh, thank you, Mataji. Okay. So with the interest of time,
Hare
we'll end
Krishna,
here. Hare
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Then Pranam. Prabhuji, can I ask you a mind-boggling question for me,
Sure, Prabhuji, please.
if you have time? So, it was a very nice class, actually, to be honest. Thank you so much. When we talk about this tolerance, there is a lot of quotes on earth being so tolerant.
Yes,
Um,
Prabhuji.
and you showed multiple places where it is quoted, and the significance of this tolerance and all these things, right? So I was wondering if earth is the best example for the tolerant. In Sistastikam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quotes, tree is tolerant. We have to be like trees.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Why do you think Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not quote instead of Taroriva? Why you could have said Prithvi Viva like that, right? Tolerant like earth. Do you any thoughts on that, Prabhuji?
No, Prabhuji, absolutely no. I mean, it would be speculation, but I think we can take examples, right? We can take examples different. It's not like there's only one person we can take an example from. There are several places we can take examples from, and probably Chaitanya Mahaprabhu picked it for whatever reason. Yeah.
Probably situation based. That's what I think.
Could be, yes.
Yeah,
maybe a tree is easy. Maybe a tree is easy to correlate for some people at a lower level than an earth, right? I mean, if you tell our children, for example, they have no clue what farming is or anything like that, right? They can probably see a tree outside. If you ask them where does milk come from, they'll say from a store.
No,
right?
that's good. Yeah. Okay, Prabhu. Thank you. That's the question I just popped up in my mind.
But I think, for definitely some acharyas, especially when it comes from acharyas, when they comment, they usually dig out and give great insight into stuff like this, right? Especially when you see Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentaries. I'm not talking about this one, but you will notice that when certain examples were given in a certain way, Vishwanath Chakravarti, Balaya Vidyabhushan, when they give, I think we definitely see a different angle they provide, right? There could be some reason, I'm sure, something we will run
Maybe it could be contextual. Most of this stuff is contextual, right? In Bhagavatam.
Yes, Prabhu.
Especially Bhagavatam is contextual.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Sorry to take your time.
All right. Okay. We'll end it here. Grandaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And I wish you all a very, very happy Ekadashi. So today's Ekadashi.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.